Welcome back to Greels Reels, everyone. We got another exciting episode for you this week. It's actually kind of funny because last week we had a guy who went from Acadia to U Ottawa. This time around, we have a guy going from U Ottawa to Acadia, a linebacker that I just had the absolute pleasure to see up close and personal for a complete season. You know, I got to say, one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet. Another East Coaster as well, which is just the cherry on top. And now, fitness social media content creator. Things are taking off for him. Evan Holmes, how's it going, man?
How are you, man? Thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, it's so nice to see you again. It's been a minute, but I mean, gotta say, it's nice to see you back on the East Coast and doing your thing out there.
Man, I was gonna say the same thing to you. It really has been like time flies, man. I does not feel like that long ago when, you and I were kicking it back in Ottawa. So
It's always nice when, because the thing is immediately when you just go away, you automatically make a connection with, like, say, a fellow Newfoundlander, right? And I'm sure you're the same way for like a fellow, like, Wolfville or like Nova Scotian. But when it's this other encompassing thing that also translates to the East Coast, like East Coasters just gravitate to each other, even when you got to live in Ontario.
yeah, no question, man. I gotta say, like people not warned me, but when I was talking about going out to school in Ontario, a lot of my like a lot of the influences in my life, some of the older adults and stuff like that would tell me like, you're going to notice a difference. It's even though you're within the same country, like you're going to notice a culture shock. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I can't imagine it's like that much different, whatever. And then when I got out there, I was like, man, like it is a little bit different. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just everything from the way we talk, out East to the things that are normal for us to say and do. It's just not quite exactly the same. So when you're out there and you run into somebody, you immediately click. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
you're very right when you say, you run into like if I run into a fellow Nova Scotia, a fellow Nova Scotian, like in the calf or something like that. Like it's really not hard before you're like, oh yeah, you went to like this high school, and then I'm like, yeah, and then like you usually end up knowing like mutual people, which is I don't want to feed the stereotype, but it's based on something, right?
100%. It's so funny because even when I think of this, so like my best friend from high school was from Bloomfield, right? Which is like about 15, 20 minutes from where I was from. So we didn't actually go to high school together, but then he went to Munn straight away. And his roommate was a varsity basketball player, Greg. And then sure enough, from the same hometown as Kalen Beaver. So as soon as I get up and start working with you guys and I'm chatting with Caleb, he's like, oh yeah, like I know Greg. And I'm like, oh yeah, like Greg stayed at my house like one night. Like
Yeah,
it, the East Coast is even smaller too, right? But yeah, it definitely fires me up whenever there's a fellow East Coaster anywhere.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. It is a community for sure.
Now, I actually want to start, just growing up on the East Coast for yourself. I know you got a younger brother. I've actually met your dad. You're like the spitting image of him, pretty much twins. If I didn't know the difference, but yeah, tell me what it was like growing up for old Evan here.
Honestly, man, like nothing special. I grew up in the valley for my whole life. For people who aren't familiar with that, there's one real city in the province, and that's Halifax, and the valley is the countryside about an hour outside of Halifax. Um, and I've moved around the valley a little bit as I grew up, but for the most part, it was in relatively small communities. Um, pretty typical upbringing in the sense like I played a couple of different sports growing up. Um, really took a liking to hockey. Was actually the initial sport that I started with. And then hockey kind of just started to kind of die out for me. And I picked up football in high school. In grade 10 was actually the first season I ever played football. And I spent that whole year sitting on the bench, even though we only had probably like 22 guys on the team. So that just goes to tell you how much of a contribution I wasn't. And then grade 11, my friends convinced me, man, just give it one more season. And I was like, okay, like, cause at this point I'd gotten into working out a little bit. So I'd put on a little bit of size, and the guys were like, man, like you can't, if you're going to be working out, like you may as well, like you will be effective on the field. Like it's only high school football in Nova Scotia. And I was like, all right, I'll give it one more season. Cause like, I really didn't enjoy last season, being absolutely just like getting my ass kicked all over the field. The, couple of times I was allowed off the bench. And then that season really took off for me. I really kind of understood the game a little bit better and gained some confidence. And then that's kind of how that was when I was like, okay, I'm done playing hockey anyway. So let's see what this football, if I can do anything with this football thing. And then I kept training as well and started taking training a little more seriously now that I had like another additional extrinsic motivator for it. And then, honestly, I mean, I grew up in Wolfville for the majority of my teenage years, which is where Acadia University is, which is where I just finished my undergrad. So I decided when I was done high school, like, Wolfville's very small. So I'm like, I'm not going to stay here. I want to get out and see what the rest of the country has to offer in a sense. And I had a couple of offers from some schools, but then my best friend Luke had an offer from U Ottawa and to play football there. And then they offered me as well. And I said, man, like, let's both go and see what this is all about. You know what I mean? A bigger city from what, I'm used to. And, a big university right downtown. It was all the things that I had not experienced yet. So I was like, let's do that. But yeah, I mean, specifically, there's not really much like special about my childhood, honestly, man. I mean, growing up in East Coast, it's probably pretty similar to yours, I would expect.
Yeah, it's pretty simple for sure. And let's not downplay Ottawa. It's funny because I do this too. We call it a bigger city because it's bigger than but that's just because when we're in Ottawa walking the streets, everybody from Ottawa is like, oh no, we're a small city. We're not Toronto, we're not Montreal. And it's like, no, you guys are, you're a big city. You're the nation's capital.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, what's the population of Ottawa? Because I think Halifax is only like 400 some thousand.
Yeah, it's just over 1 million.
Yeah, so twice the size, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that you mentioned with just Halifax and like the Valley, because Newfoundland has this thing, right, where like St. John's is the capital. There's about probably, I'd say roughly around maybe 200,000. That's just a guesstimate, more or less. I haven't checked it lately what the population of St. John's is, but then, we have this connotation of like if you were born in St. John's, you're a townie. If you grew up around the Bay, like basically anywhere outside of maybe an hour of St. John's, you're considered like a Bayman, right? And we have this rivalry where like a lot of the sports, St. John's versus anybody else anywhere in the province, right? And townies hate Bayman, Bayman hate townies, and it's just kind of this playful rivalry. Does the Valley and Halifax have that too?
Yeah, definitely to an extent. But honestly, like the Valley's so much smaller, we just can't compete further to even, much of a rivalry, everything pretty well in everything. If you're a Valley team, like a Valley High School, for example, you're an underdog. If you're playing anyone from the city or like the greater Halifax area, right? The rivalries actually are pretty strong within the city or like the greater Halifax area, just because they have the population to actually foster like a competitive, rivalry. Whereas, in my grade 12 year, I don't know if we had, I don't think so, but there's a high school in Halifax called Citadel, and Citadel is basically there used to be two high schools in Halifax, and then they combined the two of them. So Citadel's really dominant in a lot of sports. And in my high school, in my grade 12 year, we actually had a couple of pretty good football players, but we had no depth. And Citadel spanked us both games, like embarrassingly. I don't even know what the score was because, you just stop counting after it's 50 something nothing, right? But yeah, I mean, like we would love for there to be a rivalry. Like we would love to beat a city team in anything, but it's pretty rare when it happens for sure.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's very similar. I mean, a lot of our divisional, like provincial divisional tournaments and rankings, typically the A division, like the top one, is consumed with like basically all St. John's teams. So like different divisions of, the suburbs, I guess would be the right way to describe it, but like Paradise, Mount Pearl, like although like St. John's A, St. John's B kind of thing. And then we'd all be, just trying to play catch up because, you do have the majority of the population there. The only time you really see a Bayman kind of team compete with a St. John's team is if it's like a group of guys that it's like a friend group where it's enough to kind of take up the whole roster and they've been playing together since they were 3 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And those are honestly like, if and when they take like they're the underdog and they come in and win a game, like, man, that's the best story. I'm a big underdog guy. I love rooting for the underdog.
Exactly. It's so much fun because the thing is too, is it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, wow, like this is something that we're not really going to see any more kind of thing. And even like I think of, university sport, like it was finally nice to see like Calgary win it for the first time in a while. I know they're still pretty strong in the football realm, but it's almost like too, there's some guys who like went there with the goal in mind to like, hey, I'm going to win a national championship. Whereas like with a Laval or Western, it's almost like guaranteed that you're going to walk away with a national championship, at some point.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And it's basically like you're saying, just like a slightly larger version of what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's, I would like to say I see the trend kind of like to closing the gap. And I'm also no expert on this at all because, lately my time has been taken up with things that are very unrelated, but it seems to just kind of it comes down to like, population and budget. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. Even here at Acadia, like I played that so I just finished, this was my last year. And actually the draft is tonight. And one of my best friends is eligible. Like he's going to be, hopefully drafted. We have yet to see, but like we definitely have some, the smaller schools, all of them have at least a couple of like ballers, you know what I mean? Like I've played, I feel like I got a relatively good idea of what a larger school has to offer playing at U Ottawa. Cause Ottawa was competitive in the OUA, which is a strong division. We were always we would always make playoffs. The 2 years that I was there, and then I think the year before and the year after, like the team made the playoffs. Always had a winning record, 6-2 or something like that. But we had guys at Acadia when I came back here that like, were easily just as good as the best players that I played with, at Ottawa. And that's always reassuring, and it's good to see that because it does show that not everyone is significantly influenced or their decision isn't entirely dictated by the likelihood of winning a national championship, right? So, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we could definitely unpack for hours and hours and hours. And yeah, it is true. When we're recording this, the CFL draft this night was actually one of my favorite times of the year. You really do get to see some guys who work so hard, and for the most part, if you get drafted in that first 2 rounds, it's like your first time getting to be on like TSN, like a big major network, because not a lot of that's picked up anymore for U Sport.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's cool too, because a lot of the time, like, at least for me in the last couple of years, I see somebody going, I'm like, oh, I played against that guy, or like, oh, I've heard about him because he's best friends with one of my buddies that plays here, or, whatever. So that is really cool to see. Just because for some of these guys, like that's a huge turning point in their lives. Right. Mm-hmm. So my buddy and I will definitely be watching the draft tonight and just see, I hope the best for him.
Hey, I hope the best for your buddy too. I'm not exactly sure who you're talking about, but I don't know if you want to shout him out, but
yeah, definitely. So it's Matt Gledhill.
Okay.
And he's actually an Ottawa native and came to Acadia to play.
Is he a defensive lineman?
No, he's a receiver.
Receiver. Okay. I'm trying to think now because I did watch some Acadia guys in the East-West Bowl there 2 years ago now. I can't even remember since like COVID shut everything down. But
yeah, so he would have been in the East-West Bowl last year.
Last year. Okay, yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Man, it's going to be an interesting to see how tonight falls because like the NFL draft, NCAA guys still predominantly got to play a lot. Yeah. U Sports guys haven't even, like the guys going into last year's draft didn't even get their combine. And now like this year, there's no draft, no combine, no East-West. It's really just like what you've been able to do. I know DSP, who hopefully he gets called tonight from U Ottawa. I know he got down to like a Florida Prospects Bowl, but other than that, that's a dope
opportunity. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think the way the whole combine was done this year was virtually.
Yeah,
which is, it's kind of cool. If you want to look at it from an objective standpoint, like you're going to be benched on the bench that you've been training with, and you're going to be running on the field that you were training on, and you're going to be, all that kind of stuff, and you're in like kind of like, I want to say the confidence of your home. Your home, like home field advantage basically. Right. Mm-hmm. But it really does just like I feel bad for Matt because, he is an absolute workhorse. I've never seen somebody that's so dedicated. Just so like he is certainly naturally athletic, but man, does that guy grind. And I feel bad because he doesn't have the opportunity. It's such an experience, I would imagine, to go and compete at the combine and, that be, meet all these scouts and talk to these teams and have the draft, the regular draft experience. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? I feel like at this point, like nothing is out of the realm of being affected.
Exactly. And it is true. It is a special moment. So hopefully, you know what, because at the end of the day, if you get drafted, your name gets called, it is a dream come true. So maybe it doesn't necessarily matter like the specific circumstances. Maybe it is still as enjoyable. But I do know some of my fonder memories was getting to watch guys at the combine and seeing them talk to the scouts and really perform. And like when Kadeem booked his ticket to the national combine, like that was huge. When I was at Jackson's draft party too, when he went 11th overall there 2 years ago now, like those moments are so cool, right? So hopefully we can get back to that eventually.
Man, I mean, I'm sure you probably have spoken about it on every single podcast you've done in the last however many months. So again, we could unpack it for months, but I'm with you, dude. At this point, I'm sick and tired of all the experiences that are being taken away from people. But it is what it is, man. I mean, could be a lot worse, right?
No, 100%. And yeah, like hopefully things just get back to normal. Because I mean, even the frontline workers and stuff like that, they've been doing an incredible job. And I can't even imagine how it's been like for families that are even deeper impacted outside of the realm of sport, right? That we're just talking about here now. But now, going back to yourself with hockey, why do you think, because I'm interested in the fact of why do you think that you fell out of love with that particular sport in that game?
Actually, I got to be honest with you. What happened to me with hockey is I had an injury. So I made the high school team in grade 10, and which is like the typical year that they start taking, like they pretty rarely take, at least at my high school, they very rarely take grade 9s. So I made the high school team in grade 10, and then I had an injury, and the whole way the injury was kind of like perceived by the rest of the team and stuff like that, just like wasn't, I want to say positive, like super positive. And I also just was kind of falling out of love with the way that hockey was being, the way that we were kind of navigating the sport at the school, the way the culture was and stuff like that. I just was kind of less and less interested in it. And I was becoming more and more interested in other things. That's the kind of age where you're really kind of a little bit starting to come into your own. And I picked up, new interests such as training, for example. Like I was really into lifting at that point. And football was very aggressive in terms of like the commitment, but it was a much shorter season, right? So it was kind of just like I would almost call it like a little bit of a perfect storm in terms of circumstances that would kind of compound on each other and influence me to eventually, take my leave from the sport. The same thing kind of happened when I decided this year to leave the football team here at Acadia. There was just kind of a perfect storm of different variables that came together, and it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. So
Now, what position did you play in hockey?
I was defenseman.
Okay. So what style of play? Like, were you kind of similar to the football field in that linebacker position in the defensive position in hockey? Could you correlate any similarities there?
It's tough because there's such different sports.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to give myself too much credit because I was by no means a fantastic hockey player. But at that point, I was one of the bigger guys. And I'm not at that point, I probably wasn't even as tall as I am now. And I'm not, super above average in terms of my height. But I was that guy that worked out a lot. You know what I mean? So I was a little bit relied on to be a physical presence. But again, I was only in grade 10, playing against some of these guys who are, as far as I was concerned at 15 years old, like grown ass men. But that would be the major correlation, I guess I would say, is just kind of like, you're as a defenseman, you have a little bit of responsibility to kind of fill like somewhat of a tougher role. You can certainly be a tougher forward. But yeah, I wasn't a huge playmaker. I wasn't an offensive defenseman. I was doing well if I didn't make any mistakes and just kind of held my end down and asserted myself as a little bit of a physical presence. But Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit difficult to kind of draw a correlation there just because the sports are so different.
Now, when you're in the gym in high school, like what's keeping you motivated? Why is that kind of seeming to be? I mean, especially with what we know now and what you're currently doing, it definitely seems to be like your biggest love and your biggest passion.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people, struggle getting into. And I mean, it's in terms of like the sport and the competitive side of it, it's pretty lonely. Like, even in an individual sport, you at least have the kind of like that coach or like you're in that competitive environment where you're beating somebody. So you are seeing a reward. But I
Mm.
mean, you could be striving for a goal to put on 2 pounds of muscle in like the span of a month, which is so hard to kind of see. And also correct me if any of those numbers are wrong or anything like that, because I'm no expert in and that stuff. But yeah, like that, where's the motivation coming? Why do you think that you were just so drawn to that, especially at a younger age?
Uh, there's definitely a couple, and I often say, people typically get into training for like extrinsic goals, like I want to be, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to look good for, I want to be attractive, so I want to, look better, or I want to be stronger, or whatever. Or even, for example, like football players, like I want to be a better football player, so that's why I train.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, it was kind of like a combination of a lot of those things. I had a lot of extrinsic motivators initially, but then eventually, man, I don't know, like I'm at the point now, and I can't say this for everybody, but it does seem to be a trend for those who really give it an honest shot. And I'm talking about just with respect to training. Like you just fall in love with the intrinsic activity of training. Um, but I'll say from the beginning, like the initial motivators for me were my dad was always in pretty good shape, and he had gone out of his way to buy like a bench. We had some adjustable dumbbells, a bench, a bar, and enough weight. Like a significant, like a sufficient amount of weight for the bar and stuff like that. Like we had a pretty reasonable home gym, and dad was doing his workouts at home, and he was kind of coaxing me to join him. And at that point, I was just a big gamer. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm way too lazy. I want to play Call of Duty all day, and I play sports, so like that's my thing, right? But I remember one day in particular, it was like after a game, and I was just getting tossed around. I was out there. This was actually before I played high school hockey, um, and I was playing. I don't know if it was Bantam something double A or something like that, and I was like I was the biggest guy on our team. That was like the summer after a growth spurt or something like that. And again, I was being relied on as one of the guys to kind of throw the body, but I was like big boned or something like kind of lanky still. So I was not a physical presence at all. And I was being relied on to throw the body and be a physical presence, and just couldn't. I wasn't up to the challenge, right? I remember like driving home from this game after getting rocked, and my dad's like, "You got to start hitting the gym. Like if you are going to continue to play that way, you need to start training and get strong and get big." And I was like, I mean, you're probably right. I just don't, I'm lazy. I don't want to. Working out's uncomfortable. Like I don't want to do it. But then as I kind of realized like what would go along with that, even just like, and I don't want to sound conceited or anything like that, but just like the little bit of respect that people kind of automatically give you if you have a little bit of like of a physical, if you have a little bit of physical development. And I was always a geek growing up, like I said, like a lanky gamer, and all those, and coming into high school, you know what I mean? All of those things kind of together, I was like, okay, I'm going to work out because I'm tired of being a geek. And if I'm going to be playing, physical sports, and I have the kind of bone structure, like let's fill this out and see if I can be a little bit more competitive. I mean, at that point, obviously I wanted to develop a physique so that girls would find me attractive. At that point, I was like, that was a big priority for me. And then just, the influence and encouragement that my dad was giving me. He's always been a big influence in my life. Just because I have a lot of respect for the way that he holds himself and the standards that he holds himself to and stuff like that. And it's difficult to not try and follow in his footsteps when he's down there, grinding away doing his thing as well. So I all of those things together were really, really positive, influences for me, or motivators. And that kind of is how I got into it at that point, honestly.
So when you're striving to, I guess following your dad's footsteps, is there an like subliminal like feeling or fear of, letting him down?
No, absolutely not. And that's something that I've been lucky to like kind of like, I've been lucky in the sense that my parents have always been very encouraging. but they never micromanaged me, and they never really pressured me to do anything. They just pressured me to, just be a good person. Like, that sounds so cliche, but that's at the end of the day. Like, my parents they're hard on me, here and there, but they've always been just supportive. And like I said, my dad for a little bit there was definitely, encouraging me. But at no point did I ever get the vibe from in any aspect of my life, but in this one in particular, that my dad was going to be like disappointed if I didn't, fall in love with working out. You know what I mean? I mean, we've gone the full extreme on the other way now, where like dad's like, Evan, you're working out way too much. Like, do something else with your life. Like, come have a beer with us. And I'm like, no, I want to do this. And, that's not conducive to the goals that I have right now. So I'm going to lock myself in the basement and train. But, and he also gets angry at me for eating too much food, but
came full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, from the outside looking in, I see you and your younger brother, and like, it almost looks like you're a role model for your brother as well. So the fact that like you both end up going to Acadia, I feel like he's getting into the fitness more and more now too. Like, do you take that on as an additional pressure to, kind of be a good role model for him and help him in the similar steps that you guys are going with together?
I mean, when you say pressure, to me, that kind of like has like a negative connotation associated with it.
Yeah.
And I guess depending on how you view it, it could be considered pressure. But to me, it's just an additional motivator. My brother is extremely gifted in terms of being able to put on muscle and strength. He's a little bit shorter than I am, so I got the height genetic, but my brother definitely got the gym genetics. I mean, he's a freak, and he's a freak considering that, his commitment to training is nowhere near what mine is. He still has a relatively normal life. He has a ton of other priorities in his life. And he is still making, tons of progress in multiple facets of fitness overall and training. So I just look at that as, some friendly competition. I'm a very competitive individual, and, obviously I can't let my brother be stronger than me for too long. So, but yeah, I don't look at it as pressure at all. I just look at it as something that, I'm really grateful to have, somebody who pushes me in a positive way. And then, probably also looks up to me. I definitely consider it a blessing, honestly, to have that, because we have also, even just fostering a bond between the two of us with yet another area that we have in common.
Yeah, I love that mindset. He's probably listening to this though and being like, "Hey, you're not a role model to me, Evan. Come on."
I did give him that. I chucked him the bone there that he's stronger than I am in a couple of movements. So
yeah, there you go. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
Now, going back to Ottawa. So when you first get onto campus, you start adjusting to the game and stuff like that. Just kind of take me through those first motions.
So with respect to football or just in general?
In general, football, campus, you're a student athlete now.
True. So I remember I got there, I think around the same time, Luke and I, you remember Luke. So Luke and I went together. We didn't take the same vehicle, but we did end up there around the same time. And I remember seeing my res for the first time, 90U, and being like, that is the biggest residence I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? Because here at Acadia, even at Acadia, we have a tower. It's called Tower Res, but it's only 13 stories. You know what I mean? And nowhere near as nice as 90U, right? So at 90U, which is what, 20 stories, I think.
Yeah, something great. I lived in Thompson though, so that was like
yeah, just as tall, right?
Yeah.
Like the same kind of thing. I don't know what it's like or what you had, been kind of accustomed to as far as res and what campus looks like, being from Newfoundland. But for me, when I got there and I was like, at first I was looking at 90U and I'm thinking, that's a res? Like, that's insane. Let alone that's our res. That's where I'm living. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't even notice. I just thought Thompson was another skyscraper. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a country bumpkin, right? I got there on campus and I'm just like, I have no idea. I couldn't even tell where campus stopped and started at that point. But Luke and I got there and we were on the 17th floor. And I just remember being like, this is unreal. This is crazy. I've never experienced anything like that before. Just like, even just the view of the city, I was like, damn, this is going to be cool. But it was certainly intimidating just because everything was so different. I really felt like I wouldn't say like a fish out of water, but I was definitely, lost walking around campus, didn't really know how to navigate, like even just the public transit system. For the longest time, I had no idea how to even get to Lee's. So the practice field, I didn't, there, like we took, one day we walked there, and then the next day I think I got to drive or something like that. And by the next time I had to walk or something, I was like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to be late for meetings, which is literally a nightmare. So, but yeah, honestly, that transition was, it was kind of like a blessing and a curse in the sense that I was there early for training camp. So training camp was very intimidating. I'm walking in there as a true freshman at 18 in a huge city. But it was nice because by the time that like classes started, I had my feet under me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, overall I thought I had a good idea of what to expect because I had a pretty good relationship with a lot of the guys here in Wolfa that played on the Acadia football team. Even like when I was in high school, I mean, just because, the gym, I would train at the university gym. So I would, work in with them sometimes and develop a relationship with them there. But then when I got there when I got to Ottawa, it wasn't anything like I was expecting because I was kind of basing everything off of this, what I had, the vision that I had of what university football was like was entirely based off of what I'd known or what I knew about here at Acadia. And obviously they're just like university football is university football, but every team and program is so different. So
yeah, each one has its own individual things to offer, right? And I mean, it's funny because we can talk about numbers and stuff like that, and the fact that there's a big game on our Ottawa schedule every year that sits 24,000 people, where it's like I came from a town at 6,000. Like this is nuts.
Yeah, exactly. This is the same with me.
Yeah.
I mean, Wolfville is 4,000 people, and then I think it's 7,000 or 8,000 when the students are here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? Nowhere like literally, what is that? 3 times the size of the town in one place watching a football game.
It's absolutely wild. So now, when one thing that I wanted to touch on, you mentioned that time in August and how it was nice for you to be able to get kind of like the ground under your feet before classes get going. I resonated with that because I think my favorite time of the year was just those like the last few weeks in August, right? When training camp is finally kind of wrapping up, we're getting a game into the season. You get that introduction to some of the new guys, and now like just things get ramping up, and it's almost like a little bit of an advantage where it's like, okay, we got something going here before the craziness of classes kind of pick up and everybody's on campus.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Although I do have to say, both in first year, I was still so like I was still lacking so much confidence just as a rookie. Like that's just kind of expected, right? And then I remember second year I came in, and second year I was playing defensive end just because I think it was our starters were hurt or something like that. So they just moved me to DN for additional depth or something like that. So both of those circumstances, I was a little bit kind of like, how would I call it? Like a little bit off kilter, you know what I mean? But I know exactly what you're talking about because training camp is tough, especially training camp under Coach B. Those 2-a-days. I don't know. I can't remember if we were still doing 2-a-days in my second year or if we had switched it to like those big power practices or whatever. But
yeah, I think it was like because mind you, we came to the University of Ottawa at the same time. I started working with the team at the end of the first year, right? So
that's right.
That April, May, around this time actually. Of the first year. Then my first, like, I guess, big camp was the start of like our second year, my first year with the team officially, I guess. And I think it was like a transition period because I do remember some 2-a-days.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I think at that point they were starting to move from the 2-a-day model to something a little bit more feasible.
Yeah.
But man, I remember in my first year, we're like 4 days in of 2-a-days, and I'm waking up thinking like, man, I don't even know if I like football this much. I'm like, Luke and I are waking up looking at each other, just absolutely written off. You know what I mean? It's like 6:30 in the morning, or whatever, because practice would start at like 8 or something like that. And, we're eating whatever breakfast cereal we'd been lucky enough or fortunate enough to buy before camp started. And we're just like, man, I'm exhausted. Like I've never done this before. And, so when training camp starts to finish up, that's when you're like, man, we're through the worst of it. Because I don't want it doesn't, I make it out to sound like it's a negative experience, and it's obviously not. But just as a first year, you know what I mean? You're putting so much pressure on yourself, and you're still like very, uneasy in terms of where you fit in on the team. And like, you're still kind of getting like the handle on how things are done. Right. But yeah, definitely by the end of that, even the fact that the weather's cooling down toward the end of August and stuff, like, man, that's a great vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the students are rolling in.
Yeah,
Great vibe.
it's a lot of fun. I gotta say, I miss it dearly. But when you're going through that training camp, do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage at this point that you've only started really getting into football grade 10/11?
Disadvantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because, football is, as much as it sounds, kind of ironic to people outside looking in, football is such a cerebral game. If you don't have your head fully wrapped around the playbook, which I never did, which was a huge, problem.
Mm-hmm.
A big reason that I think that I never really came into my own as a football player. But if you don't have your head wrapped around the playbook and you don't really understand what's going on around you, like, you're just so much further behind. The other thing too is that football is such a different sport from any other sport. And so even from like less of a technical perspective, if you don't have a handle on the culture of football, which definitely varies between, program to program, but overall football is its own beast entirely. And if you're still not quite used to the way things are done in the world of football, that can be a little bit of a disadvantage as well. You know what I mean? Just because the whole time you're kind of like trying to get your feet under you, but there's just so many new things and so many things you're not quite used to yet, right?
You just have so many people who are basically got this killer instinct, just striving to be at the top level that they possibly can be at, all in the same room, and you're supposed to coherently work together, which is almost in any other situation. It's like, okay, yeah, let's put, say, I don't know what official roster sizes are now, but I think it's around 70 to 80 that you can go in with at the start of like training camp, somewhere around there. Then you're adding an additional, probably, depending on the program, let's say anywhere from like 10 to 20 coaching staff, like people who are just kind of coming in and out, either if they're full-time or part-time, because every single one of them has like this extensive, impressive background. And it goes right to the trainers too, like the athletic therapists, the trainers that are on the field, like they're trying to be at the top of their game. And I love what you said about trying to wrap your head around the playbook, because I mean, for me, the reason when I was like, okay, you know what sport should I try and, because I had done this stuff in the past. So like, what sport should I introduce myself to try and get going? And I always wanted to go into this broadcast realm of things. And I was like, okay, well, come from Newfoundland. There's no football. I don't really know any other sport, or sorry, I know every other sport. Like I'm familiar with hockey. I'm familiar with basketball. I understand and all that good stuff. But what's one that I can't wrap my head around of? And it's football, because it's, from the outside looking in, it's so hard to really know the intricate details of it. So it's like, all right, obviously, having Ty Beezer and Trey be on my floor all the time definitely helped, because it's like, okay, now I have two good buddies to go into it. Obviously, there was a bunch of other guys like Jelani, Daniel, even some of the guys who were just there for like the 1 year, right? Chance, Ryan, so many people, even through it, that whole Thompson building. I'm getting scared, because I'm like, I don't want to forget anybody, but I'm also like, now that I started naming a few names, I'm like, okay, but there is also a bunch of them, right? Because they were all scattered throughout the Thompson residence. But so get into football to mainly learn it, and that's really like, if you, obviously you can learn from like being outside, but there is just no better studying than actually being there and being live and watching those games, and sitting in on the scattered meeting and hearing the talk and hearing coaches talk with players and stuff like that, and watch the drills and understand what every kind of movement goes into. It's incredible. Like I mentioned this on this podcast a bunch of times, but watching guys like, Red Blacks now, but like Richie Leone, LP, and Lewis Ward go through their special teams unit, and it's like LP, their long snapper, he's snapping the ball to get it at a certain speed, but placement where the laces are facing like a certain position. Like, it is beyond measure. But yeah, so I love what you said about just trying to wrap your head around the playbook there.
Yeah, man, it's just like I said, people outside looking in don't understand how cerebral the game is. It's so complicated. I mean, even the fact that you have 12 guys in the field per team, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's another sport that has that many people in the field at one time. I might be
I
wrong.
think, yeah, I think the biggest thing too, though, with football, and you really, and honestly, probably the only other argument to this might actually be soccer, so like European football, but you can almost have like your star player on a basketball team can play the majority of the games, and like they can win you a game. Same thing with hockey, right? Like guys can really take off, and there is like this thing with football that they have where you like if you have the best quarterback in the league, like it's going to help you, but still if you have the worst defense in the league,
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Like you
they're
could have the
lost.
best quarterback in the league, but if you don't have anybody good playing around him, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think what you're getting at is like it's one of the only sports where like one person doesn't have a huge impact. You really have to work it. The better team wins the game. You know what I mean? Whereas in some cases, one team might be better, but the other team, might have an absolute stud that can just put up like, I don't know, in basketball, they can put up like 30 or 40 points, right? And like that's enough of a percentage of the overall score that could swing a game. Whereas football, that's just not going to happen.
And what we're seeing now too is even this debate with the class. I mean, we're at this point in the NFL where these wide receivers that have come out the last couple of seasons have just been absolutely incredible, right? But there's this argument and a debate that gets poised where it's like, hey, like there's like 8 other people who have to be good on a play before the wide receiver even gets the chance to be the ball. So like get the ball. So maybe make sure that that's taken care of in all realms before you go drafting a wide receiver high, which I mean, kind of makes sense, but it also like, some of these guys are just like Jamar Chase, like that's almost like ridiculous what they can do with a ball. But yeah, I mean, you got your offensive line, and then your running back might have to throw a block. Your quarterback's got to be good, and then they finally get the ball.
Finally, exactly. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Whereas if you're somebody outside looking in, like I said, like you just see a bunch of big guys smashing heads, and you're like, oh, this game is for meatheads. When in reality, there's so much more that goes into it.
Now, I kind of want to expose you here. So I don't know if you remember this, but my first ever game working for the GGs was Guelph, right? And this is something that has stuck with me. The classic triple overtime, like the Ward versus Ferrero field goal kickoffs,
Yeah,
back and forth,
that
back
was,
and forth.
that was in Guelph, right?
Yeah, that was in Guelph. So that was the start of your second year.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still new to the game at this point. I'm trying to learn, and there was like a bunch of penalties that had happened on the play. Like it was a weird play. Anyways, I turned and I just kind of look over my shoulder and I asked this question to a football player, and I'm like, "Hey, what's like what just happened?" And the response was, honestly, man, I have no idea. Like I'm still relatively new. I've only been playing for a couple of years, and of course, that football player was you.
Dude, it doesn't surprise me, man. It does not surprise me. Like I said, man, like the first couple of years I played football, like I couldn't even have told you what a gap was, or you know, the different techs that the D line were taking. Like none of it. I was just like, because I played in a small high school, and we just didn't have the coaches. There was like 3 of them. You know what I mean? And we had maybe like 25 guys at most. And the only advice I ever got was be an athlete and don't suck. It's like, all right, I guess I can try my best to do that. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that was my answer. What happened? And I'd be like, dude, I am in the same position you are because I'm just happy to be here.
But I feel like that is also such a testament to, your athletic ability, to the fact that, you might not have the knowledge, but you can make up for it somehow, because it's hard to dress a football game, right? Like it's not something that is easy, right? Especially at the university level. So why do you think that is? Like, I mean, I've seen so many guys literally not dress because they don't know their playbook. But yet, like, I find like you, and obviously playbook and rules are 2 different things, but you can lack that knowledge but still get in the lineup.
Well, I think my only saving grace was that, especially in that second year, I was playing D end, and I think conceptually defensive line is the easiest position to play. There's just like your world's pretty small, especially as a defensive end. There's only so many reads you can make off the offensive tackle and then the offensive guard. And I guess the offensive line in total, but at that point I wasn't even to the point where I was able to conceptualize that. But honestly, I think that was my saving grace, was just that I was playing a position that didn't require me to know that much. It was just, for the most part, this is your triangle. Keep an eye on, these, several guys, and then react accordingly and do it as athletically as possible. And then again, I think the only other thing would just be the fact that I had been in the gym, not even training like an athlete, but just training at all, gave me a little bit of a leg up, versus at least other guys that were in similar positions to me, in the sense, like, being 18, or 19, I guess, at that point. But yeah, that was really my only saving grace, was just that I had happened to have been, working out, and I was a little bit stronger than average for my size. And then I was playing a position that probably had one of the most, the most impact, right? Because I was never fast. I was always reasonably athletic, but nothing too crazy. You know what I mean? But honestly, I think that's just the simplicity of the position at that point, because it certainly wasn't my my understanding of the game, the playbook, any of the above.
I can't remember. Did you do much special teams?
Yeah, that was the majority of my. I mean, at that point, like, special teams is kind of the ideal spot for somebody who doesn't understand the game, but is somewhat athletic. You know what I mean? So that was, for the most part, why I would dress games, was to play specials.
Yeah, and I feel like that's honestly, maybe if you are coming out of high school, like, just from my observation, watching guys who, come out of high school and it's their first year and what gets them onto the field, that's my recommendation, is like, know your special teams, like, be a baller on special teams, because that's what's going to get you dressed.
Absolutely. I think, like, every time you move up, every time you move up a league, if you will, or the level of play, that's what they tell you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for all the guys getting drafted tonight in the CFL, a couple of them are going to be studs, and they're going to be competing for a spot, probably not the top spot, but a spot in the depth on their respective position. But every single guy, unless probably a QB, but every single guy getting drafted tonight needs to be able to compete on special teams, because that's, for the most part, and again, I'm definitely not like a football expert, as we have established, but that's what I've been told. That's what I've heard. You know what I mean? After guys like my buddy Matt, or even my buddy Bailey, who was drafted last year by Hamilton, they're talking to him and being like, we really want you to compete on specials, because obviously it's going to take you a little bit of time to integrate into the systems that we have established on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, right? So I think that that's definitely the common wisdom is get your ass on specials and compete like hell, and that's how you'll get the dress.
Well, not to mention too, depending on what age you're at and, how many years you played them, if you did say Jep or whatnot, but for the most part, you're coming into this maybe at like anywhere from probably 23, 24, 25, and that's even depending on the league, right? Yeah. But with the CFL then too, you're going to be probably competing against a 28, 29-year-old / 30-year-old for that top depth chart position, just somebody who's maybe been there. And the other thing too is there's still politics in that, where it's like, okay, do we want our, fifth rounder to beat out our guy who we're actually paying six figures, or a legitimate portion of the salary? So sometimes, like, all that intricate details, it's just like, okay, let me get on specials, let me do my thing, and then when that guy needs a break for a couple plays, I'll hop in there. So then at least I can get my film there, and then, ideally it's like a step-by-step, year after year. And sometimes it happens quicker, sometimes it happens slower for guys, right?
Absolutely. Because there are a lot of different variables that are going to affect that. You know what I mean? Like, you might come in and be, a linebacker, but you're not even on the depth chart as a linebacker. And then, three guys get hurt in one position. At that point, like, they're going to move some guys around, and all of a sudden you might be dressing and playing a couple snaps, right? So you're 100% right. I mean, I say that again, as somebody who doesn't really know football as well as they probably should.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we can give ourselves a little credit. I feel like we know enough that we're not saying anything super outrageous here. Like, I feel like this is some pretty safe knowledge for us to say. Watch the reviews, be like, man, these two had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah, well, I could just picture like some of the boys that I played ball with at Ottawa jumping on this to watch it and being like, Holmes, what are you saying, man? You are speaking out of turn this whole time. Just like, you
Hey,
may very well be right.
I'm open to the lesson. Like if anybody wants to teach me more, I will sit down and learn as much as I can about football. It is definitely one of the fascinating sports for sure.
Yeah, it's its own breed for sure.
Now, I still remember this pretty vividly. It was right before you were, moving back to the East Coast. I ran into you and your dad at FNS. I believe you might have actually been with Luke or maybe your brother too. Um, it was just kind of like a quick goodbye, like see you later kind of thing. So I know, you end up getting hurt. You're making that move back home to kind of rehab. And again, correct me on any of this, but yeah, like take me through that process.
Oh yeah, so that was honestly like one of the major catalysts for me to come back home. So what happened was, I've been having like a nagging knee problem. But I never had like any knee injury, and I was getting some tests done. I saw, a couple orthopedic surgeons or whatever. I had an MRI and all that stuff, but I just basically had like this nagging knee pain that wouldn't go away. No one could diagnose it. And then someone was like, "Well, man, get an X-ray." And I was like, "Well, I didn't break my knee. Like, I don't need an X-ray." But anyway, I was like, "All right, I'll do anything at this point to get it fixed because I just want to be able to." I remember that summer going into first year and second year, I couldn't squat and I couldn't run. So I was really restricted to was like posterior chain movements and, the occasional like easy running just to try to keep my cardiovascular endurance in check. So anyway, I got the X-ray and I had Bipartite Patella, which is where like my kneecap had grown into two pieces. So the initial surgery that was done toward the end of the season of my second year was just to remove the smaller of the two pieces because it was aggravating my patellar tendon that goes through your knee. But then my knee, so basically they just like, they sever a piece of your kneecap off because at that point it was in like two pieces, not two completely separate pieces, but like there was enough of a division there that they could take one of them out. But then what happened is it got infected in the operating room. At least I think it was in the operating room because it was pretty quick after that I started exhibiting symptoms of infection. And then I remember I went in for a second surgery 2 weeks after the first one because my knee just like it wouldn't. I had it sutured and then they glued it, but it was opening, like it wouldn't close and stay closed. So they brought me in to clean it out and then properly suture it with real stitches the second time. And then they took samples that time. And then it came back and like, "Oh yeah, you have an infection. So here, take some antibiotics. Should be no big deal." But at that point, it was too late. And I was on the antibiotics for like, I think 2 days. And then I was back in the emergency room for emergency surgery because I was going into septic shock because the infection was getting so bad. So that was just an absolute gong show. Something that should have been just a reasonable surgery, maybe a month and a half timeline, rehab, and come back, pretty smooth, right? And it was not. So I was on. Oh, this is such a gong show. They stuck me with basically a permanent IV for a 6-week period, but I wasn't able to get that service because of my health insurance in Ontario. So I came back to Nova Scotia because that's where I had to be for my health insurance to cover it. Early first semester, spent 6 or 7 weeks here with this IV in my arm and a fanny pack that had a IV fluid in it, pumping antibiotics into me. So that was 6 or 7 weeks. And then I went back to Ottawa and transitioned from the IV antibiotics to just oral antibiotics. And then I was back and forth from the hospital so many times. At that point, I should have deserved shares in Uber because I was spending so much money on Ubers to go back and forth between Sandy Hill and the Montfort Hospital. But yeah, so
it's like a $30-$40 Uber, man.
Oh yeah. It wasn't cheap, man. But my parents were like, spend the money and we'll just take care of this because obviously like this has to be done. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, at that point I wasn't doing anything else with my life. So, all my beer money for the weekend was going towards Ubers to the hospital. But so anyway, that I had a fourth surgery in like March or February of the second semester of my second year. Well, I was on antibiotics from like January to June. So there was just kind of like this whole second semester of my second year was like terrible because I was catching up on exams that I was supposed to do first semester. So I wrote them like on my reading week. I was in and out of the hospital. Sometimes I was too ill to like be able to write midterms. So midterms were getting, pushed toward the end of my second semester. Like it was just awful. And at that point, I just kind of decided like, I think that in order to take care of this, like it's just better for me to be home. I'm not going to have any health insurance issues. And then, obviously it's just, I'm in a position of vulnerability right now. Like, I think it's just more intelligent to just have my parents there, or at least like able to help me. You know what I mean? So when I moved back in the summer of between second and third year, that was a huge decision for me. I remember thinking about, I talked to so many people. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I just kind of decided like, I really enjoyed my time in Ottawa, but we still hadn't figured everything out with respect to this whole, infection situation. And I just decided that I think those two things together, the fact that I hadn't figured out what I was going to do, and that I had experienced Ottawa as much as I thought was reasonable, they kind of just compounded. And I was like, okay, I think the move right now is to come back home. I can still play football. I can play football in front of the people, who I love, like my family and stuff like that, who at that point had never seen me play a game in the CIS. Just that, all of those things together, it was just kind of like, I just decided like, you know what, I'm going to make that transition. I'm going to, I had that time away from home, but I think now that I've had the time away from home, I really appreciate being home. So all those things together definitely played a significant role.
That is huge. You definitely just appreciate where you come from more when you leave for an extended amount of time. Now, with regards to, well, actually, one big thing that I actually want to stress for anybody who's looking to go to university outside of their home province is to make sure that the healthcare and the medical care plan is all taken care of, because I got bronchitis one year and I thought I was going to go bankrupt from that. Like that was just an absolute mess.
Yeah, man. I didn't even know that was a thing. You know what I mean? At that point I was still a kid. Right. So my parents had pretty well just taken care of everything. Like I didn't have a lot of health problems growing up, lucky enough. So I didn't really have a lot of experience in that, but man, by the time I was there, and then I have a doctor coming in and being like, yeah, you really need this, but I can't give it to you. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going home. I don't really have much of a choice. Right.
I've had that conversation too with like the antibiotics and stuff like that for just like flus and stuff when they're up there. It's like, yeah, you need this, but you're tough at luck. Like,
yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah, which is wild, right? But now, with regards to like your leg, are you thinking at any point like, are you almost just spiraling like thoughts of like, am I going to lose my leg here? Like, what's going to happen? Like,
yeah.
Control?
Well, so I definitely have. Like I have a lot of health related anxiety nowadays, and I think it probably stems from that experience. Because that was definitely a possibility. For a while, they were like, yeah, we don't know how this is going to go. And they said like, we're going to keep running tests and all this kind of stuff. And that's why I was so diligent going back and forth from the hospital. But that's what they were saying is basically like technically there is a possibility that you can lose your leg. And we're not really sure how likely that is right now. Because we can't keep you on this IV because you're back in Ontario. So it has to be oral antibiotics. And at that point I was trying to juggle like, okay, do I take a semester off my university career? Do I try to do these courses online? Do I stay here and take the risk of, take the oral antibiotics that aren't as strong or effective as the IV ones and hope for the best? It was definitely a stressful time for sure. And I think that's part of the reason as well that I decided to come home is because at that point I really realized like, I don't need to bite off more than I can chew. Like I'm just happy to be, have two working legs and, be able to still play football. Like I don't need any more additional stress in my life by being away from home. You know what I mean? So all that kind of stuff just kind of contributed to me just like appreciating like not the bare minimum, but appreciating, like, I didn't need as much, right? I was grateful for the things that I did have. And so that was kind of one of the reasons that I was like, okay, I definitely, I can justify moving home because I will definitely still enjoy that.
Is there added frustration when they're telling you, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, but here's probably the worst case scenario for you that probably might not happen, but also probably will happen?
I mean, not really, because I understand how difficult it is from a doctor's perspective, right? Like, it's up to them to explain to you objectively, like, these are the facts, right? And I can't tell you one way or the other, how I think this is going to turn out. I was lucky enough that the doctor that I was working with a couple of them, but the orthopedic surgeon who I was seeing, who had dealt with this kind of stuff in the past, he wasn't an infectious disease specialist, but he had just kind of experienced it in the past. His name was Dr. Bissett. So shout out Dr. Bissett. He's an absolute beast. I remember him saying, like, okay, technically, yes, there's a possibility that this could happen, but from what I have seen, because he was a relatively experienced doc, he was like, I don't think it's a significant possibility. Like, I don't think you have a lot to worry about. And he said, and we can always go back to, the IV antibiotics if these oral ones aren't working. And so as a kid who's, my head jumping to, like, worst possible case scenario, and I have other professionals saying, like, it is a possibility that you could lose your leg. Like, that was very reassuring. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, as an overthinker, like, I feel if I'm in the similar situation, I'm just worst case scenario, and I'm not even going to be able to sleep at night because this is all that's weighing on my head. So the fact that somebody, and that's sometimes all I need for some simple decisions, is like for just people to come in and be like, hey, like, you're like, this is good. Like, don't worry, don't stress, kind of thing. Right. So I can definitely see how that was huge for you.
Yeah. I mean, even like, it is up to the doctor, I think, to relay the facts, but it's also up to them. I think a good doctor can make the decision when to share certain facts. You know what I mean? So, for example, a doctor could say, yeah, technically there's a chance you lose your leg, but if it's only a 0.05% chance, like, what's the point of sharing that information other than you're just going to stress the patient out, right? So I think that's a good point too, is even if, it's up, I think people who have navigated those situations more frequently, so for example, more experienced docs, that's a point where experience comes into play, right? Like, they know when to say certain things and provide mental support too, right?
Yeah. And we can even relate that back to football, right? It's typically, what you see in terms of like defensive players and even, offensive players is, in the quarterback position, calling audibles and stuff like that, like seeing different things in, say, the offense or the defense, like adjusting plays. That typically comes from, the more experienced players who have seen it multiple times, right? And they're like, oh, they're in this formation, they're doing this.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I think it's a bit of a disadvantage with respect to football, in particular, to have played less before getting to the level of, like, university.
Exactly. So when you switch over to the universities and you finally get to Acadia, I guess that's definitely a huge transition and probably not the same. Your first days on campus at Acadia are definitely not the same at U Ottawa.
Oh, absolutely not. Just because, I mean, even in high school, like I said, I developed a little bit of a relationship with a lot of the guys on the team here at Acadia. When I came in my first day as an Acadia football player, I was like, man, I'm home. Like, I know this place like the back of my hand. The head coach here at Acadia, Coach Cummins, I've known Coach Cummins since I was, 5, like a really young kid. Because my parents work at the university too. So they've had a relationship with Coach for as long as he's been here. And he's been here, I think, 21 years now or something like that. So yeah, that I came in feeling kind of like technically the players in the team, a couple of them I definitely knew, just because, a lot of guys that play football in Scotia will stay and play football in Scotia from high school to university. So I did know, like, a good number of guys here on the team. But, a lot of the other guys that I didn't know were like, who's this transfer coming in here who's a first year, as far as I'm concerned, but walking around like he owns the place, right? And I definitely tried. That was a weird line for me to navigate, right? Because, like, as far as Coach is concerned, like, I've known Coach forever. Coach recruited me. Like, he knows I'm a good enough football player to compete. And then these other guys are like, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't earned my respect yet. So I had to walk that line of being like, in the eyes of some people, I was not a rookie, and in the eyes of other people, I was, right? So it was a little bit of an interesting, I should say, dynamic to kind of navigate, but I definitely enjoyed it for sure.
It's funny because, like I said at the intro, we had, Sean Stokwa on, who was a two-sport athlete at Acadia. And did you meet Sean before?
Yeah, I know Sean pretty well.
Yeah. So, and he was saying the whole, very similar to that point where it's like, if he was practicing with the basketball team or practicing with the football team, like one side was kind of getting angry where it's like, hey, like, who do you think you are to come in here? And that's when he said, like, it took a toll when you got to that leadership role, right? So, yeah, I can definitely see how some guys who are like, man, who does this guy think he is telling me what to do? But like realistically, you've been there your whole life almost.
Yeah, well, I definitely didn't tell anybody what to do.
Mhm.
But I know what you're saying because I was
Yeah.
careful of that, right? Like I did not want to be that guy that rolled in here and like gave off the vibe that like I thought I was top dog. You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of respect for seniority and the guys who had fought those 4 or 5 years to establish himself as a leader on the team. And I wasn't going to come in here and undermine it just because I've known coach since before I was out of diapers, right? But yeah, I like you're absolutely right. Like it is something that honestly can be very stressful for athletes that isn't really talked about that often. But knowing your place on a team and earning your place in a team and not, I don't want to say working your way up like a hierarchy, but just working your way into a comfortable, accepted place on a team and understanding the different seniorities and that kind of stuff. Like that's as much of, being a teammate as knowing your position. Right. So, I mean, that was something that it was really stressful for me as a first year because I'm going in there. Like I remember one time we were running specials and I was playing scout against Kadeem. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go hard because I want to earn my spot. Right. Like that's what all the coaches are telling me. And all the vets are like, yeah, go hard. You want to put some good stuff on film. And I was going hard, but I'm still like, Kadeem's a monster. Right. So he's like, man, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just playing my position. And he's like, okay, sure. The next rep, he just flat backs me. And I remember being like, all right, I see how it is now. I understand. I need to know, I need to pick my battles. You know what I mean? I got to know when to do this and when not to do this kind of thing. But yeah, the social aspect of sports is huge too.
I couldn't agree more. That makes me laugh. The fact, yeah, arguably probably one of the best. Like, because I mean, Kadeem went defensive line to linebacker pretty fluidly. One of the
Oh yeah.
best in that position that U Ottawa's had over the last 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Yeah. No, I remember that day pretty clearly for sure.
But no, the social aspect is huge, right? And even just from my perspective as a staff member on some of these teams, like you got to understand that like certain guys are going to want to see out of every role in just terms of like fluidness and stuff like that. And especially in my role, like if I'm going to ask you to give me energy and show up with a camera in your face and ask you to almost like, whether it's say maybe a quote after practice or some extra video, photo content, whatever it may be, like maybe it's just me, like an internalized respect that I have for athletes, but it's like, I'm going to make sure that like, hey, I'm giving it 110%. If you guys are out here for 3 hours, like I'm out here for 3 hours kind of thing. Like if it's pouring rain, I'm out here in the pouring rain. Obviously, as things kind of got going for me in Ottawa and I got more and more responsibilities like outside of the U Ottawa, like that was harder to do for football, but that was always like my main priority is like, I'm going to be here as much. It doesn't matter the weather. Like I'm going to, cause even, some of the guys, I remember in that first training camp, the one at the end of our first year, it poured, like
Yeah.
it was just raining and I honestly think I maybe took like 3 photos because I couldn't even like had the camera out. It was raining that hard. And some of the guys are like, man, like, why are you here? And it was like, because you guys are here. Like that was and that goes a long way. That definitely helped me out a lot.
It goes a long way. Like I gotta say, man, you were accepted on the team so fast just because I think because of that like dedication, that demeanor you had. You know what I mean? You were happy to be there. You were doing everything without hesitation, without question. You know what I mean? And you were doing all the same stuff that all of us were. We're sweating our asses off out there in either the blazing sun or like you were saying, the pouring rain. And you're out there too, man. Like just bundled up like the rest of us, with the friggin' transparent parka on there covering the camera and all that stuff. And I mean, half of us are looking at each other like, man, this is our 6th practice and like whatever, however many days, school's over. Like I want to go home. Like this guy's out here doing it with us, and that does go such a long way. And I almost feel like by the time your undergrad came to an end, like you were a vet on the team too. You know what I mean? Like you had seniority on the team too. Like you probably could have told rookies, like, you need to do this right now. Trust me. Like what I know. And the rookie's just going to be like, man, okay, I'm listening to this guy. You know what I mean? Like he's obviously in with the big dogs. So
that's a huge compliment. I really do appreciate that. I mean, I think in terms of like that aspect, I was always one. I think my biggest pridefulness was like I love when I would basically more or less just be a someone to talk to, right? Like that was my big thing because what I realized too is being in my particular position and what I found a lot of guys could just vent without fear of, you know, being moved up or down in the depth chart, right? Or even um, you know, having some kind of confrontation on the field because of like the venting and stuff like that, right? Which is something that I took a lot of pride in, right? And I was like, yeah, like I'll listen, and you know, it's just like it's something that yeah, get it off your chest kind of thing, right? Because there's a huge standpoint in that. So yeah, I don't think yeah, I mean that was kind of like the extent, right? I still don't know if I know that much about football to
but that's not even what I mean. Like honestly, like you even before my time there was over, like you had become one of the players, honestly. Like you'd fit in with all of us the same way. You know what I mean? You were doing all the same things that the players were doing, and you were there getting to know everyone on the team. And you were in a similar position in the sense that like you're a staff member, but like you wouldn't necessarily have a say over the depth, right? Mm-hmm. So you're precisely right when you're talking about like, you know, guys could say whatever they really wanted to, and you would reciprocate it, and they felt comfortable around you. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, one of the reasons that like you have developed such a seemingly like genuine and meaningful relationship with, you know, almost everybody that's gone through that program for a relatively extended period of time, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that a lot. Like, cause that is the biggest thing that no matter what, like players first and foremost, right? Which is why I just did extra things too, where it's like, and now obviously I do get some like internal enjoyment, and it's not just me donating my time. Like there is, you know, some selfishness in it where I like doing this stuff and I love it, right? But you know, being in the gym with you guys and like, you know, doing the workouts and stuff like that, and even going to the dome and doing those dome sessions where like it's not a serious practice, but like I'm running routes, and I, you know, I did some of the summer runs and stuff like that, and it's just, you know, man, I'm terrible. I'm not an athlete. I'm not I'm not gonna outrun anybody. But for the most part, like guys got a good laugh at it, if anything, right? Like
and you develop bonds with people. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, man, like unless you are going to go to the CFL, like my perspective with university football was always that was the biggest thing I wanted, was to enhance my university experience, because I knew I wasn't going to the CFL. So I was like, I want to play football. I want to be good. I'm competitive, but I want to play football because I want to develop, I want to meet new people. I want to make really good friends, and I want to develop meaningful relationships with people that are going to make my experience as a student that much better, right? So I know exactly what you're talking about.
100%. Yeah, that's the thing. I think my favorite one was like when somehow I think you might not have been there at this point, but somehow this conversation got up because I'm always like, man, I'll always bet on myself. So it was the toss up question was who's gonna win a race, myself or JV, which is the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And then Coach White put 100. He said he'd give me $100 if I beat JV in a race, and I was like, 100%. Like, I'm not gonna lose anything here. So like, then more or less my strat. I had a game plan. I was like, okay, JV is gonna mess around with me. He's gonna probably run backwards for a little bit, and then, you know, kind of stay with me up until the finish line. And then once we get to the finish line, I'm just gonna dive and beat him.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to beat him on the dot. That was not the case. He just took off flat and beat me. And there was probably been a 5 seconds difference in the time that he finished and I finished. And, you know, we did like a 30-yard, 40-yard, whatever it was. But all the guys are like, oh, man, like, why would you do that? Like, man, JVB. And I was like, dude, like, if anything, best case scenario, I get $100. Worst case scenario, you guys just got out of meetings for like 15 minutes and got a good laugh out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's the thing, man. Like that stuff goes so far.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. I hope that again, like it just goes back to it, because that whole team camaraderie, like seeing guys like just all together, like you working for that one goal. You know, we've reflected on that Guelph game a little bit, like just being in a whole different city where it really is you versus anybody else, right? And you know, we're having our team breakfast, and that hotel manager comes in with the Guelph hat on and starts chanting like "Go Griffins," and it's like, man, like we're gonna beat you guys, so it doesn't even matter. Like, get out of here, kind of thing.
No, it's an experience for sure, man.
So when you get to Acadia and you start experiencing that, I know, you know, probably a highlight I'm assuming is, you know, winning an AUS championship there with your brother.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, and I mentioned earlier that there was kind of like a perfect storm of variables that contributed to me deciding to to like retire, if you will, call it that. But that was one of them. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't healthy going into my fourth year, like the last season there, and I wasn't healthy during the season, but I was still able to play, contribute, and the fact that I was able to play with my brother, which I'd never done before, and the fact that we went 8-0 and then we went 9-0, like man, that stuff, like it's insane. Like the memories that we had, that I have from that experience, I will always have them, and I will always, like, I'll never forget how exciting it was to like, honestly, our last game we played against Mount A to finish the regular season, like that was a nail biter, and then to be able to go out and actually have all of our aspirations come to fruition when we played in the Loney Bowl and won the Loney Bowl, like, yeah, it was phenomenal. I got to say, everything about the season, even the fact, like, even the first game that my brother and I played together, like, even that was just crazy for me. You know what I mean? It's funny to think about, like, my brother and I coming from, beating each other up in the backyard with sticks to beating somebody else up on the turf. You know what I mean? At St. FX when we dressed together. So for sure, the season was almost as good as it could have been.
Now, we talked about underdogs, and in terms of U Sport football in this country, especially over the last 4 years, there's no bigger underdog than basically like an AUS team in that national semifinal. Now, I know obviously within an organization, you're never going to think that you're coming in, like you're not going to win that game, right? Like that's just not the mentality in the locker room. But how do you deal with the fact that basically like the whole country is even just arguing whether or not you guys deserve to be there?
Yeah. No, well, that's the thing, man. Like for us at that point, like all of that stuff is motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff, like we knew we were a good team. You know what I mean? Like we knew we were crushing teams while making tons of mistakes. You know what I mean? Like we knew we had a ton of potential. And like I said, we had some ballers on that team, man. And that was a big thing. Like that whole week leading up to the UTEC Bowl was, us talking about like nobody even thinks we deserve to be here. So let's make a point of proving everyone wrong. And that's a strong motivator, dude. Like that's huge. You know what I mean? Especially for like, and I think it's probably like a relatively common trait or characteristic in athletes, but like someone says you can't do something, you want to do it that much more, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like at the end of the day, because even, when the only comparison that I can really make is like when we're going up against, say, a Western, right? And people are like, oh, like, are you guys all right? So this is a loss. Let's look at like next week. And I'm like, no, like, what do you mean? Like, this is the year that we're going to beat Western. And I believe I was so confident. I was like, yeah, no, 100% these guys are going to go in and beat Western. Like, this is the year. And I think we lost 61-0 that year. But yeah, it was rough, but that's the thing, right? It's like that mentality is just never, I think that's why I didn't even want to phrase that question that way, because
yeah.
it's not a thing that goes into sport, right? And I can definitely see how it's a motivator, just especially amplified at that level too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like we know full well that like for the most part we're working with smaller budget here in the AUS. We have a smaller population. You know what I mean? Like all of these things working against us, but it doesn't matter. Like we just have, the mindset is just like, well, we're gonna do it in spite of all that.
Exactly. Money can't buy W's.
Exactly.
Now, first and foremost, I probably should have even led off with this. Congratulations, graduated Acadia.
Thank you,
And
man. I appreciate that.
it's crazy to think that we're both done. Like even just from the back there, like I even remember one like second year Christmas. I don't think you were there with him, but I ran into Luke and all the guys and had like a beer in the Halifax airport because just classic East Coast flying. There was delays,
Yeah.
so it's crazy to think that we're all finished up the undergrads and stuff like that. So I mean, obviously things have just taken a probably a total 180 for you. I mean, with what you might be planning on doing, but yeah, elaborate more on, I guess, what's next for yourself.
It's a good question, dude. And I kind of wish I had a solid answer for you. But at this point, I am doing everything I can to put all of my effort into this whole, fitness social media thing and see if I can take it somewhere. Because like you said, training and fitness, lifting, whatever you want to call it, has been a persisting passion for me since I was 14, probably. And it's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? It's only getting stronger. No pun intended, but it's only getting like I said, stronger and stronger. I fall more and more in love with training and the different, intricacies of it as I learn more about it. And I'm absolutely blessed to be in the position that I'm in right now. It's become a source of income for me. So I'm at the point now where I am financially sustained through my love for fitness and my content creation in that niche. So that's the next step for me, is just to kind of double down and see what I can do with it. I actually just ordered a camera.
I saw it on the story. Dude, I was going to bring it up. So does that mean some YouTube videos are coming or what?
Yes, sir. That's the play. I think the three platforms I want to focus on are Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And my content lends itself a little bit better to YouTube anyway, just because, it's difficult to fit, somewhat educational content into a minute long on TikTok or, the minute long segments on IG. So
100%. Yeah.
that's the next step, man. Like, I mean, better than anyone how expensive cameras are and that whole setup and everything. And how, like there's a significant barrier to entry into the content creation industry at the professional level, right? I haven't even turned the camera on yet. I just got it yesterday. I have no idea how it works. I have no clue what I'm doing at all. I don't know a single thing about editing. So I'm going to either probably go with Adobe Premiere or Sony Final Cut, I think, are the two. Those might not even be the two. That's how much I don't know.
Well,
But
yeah, it's not Sony. It's just Final Cut. It's Apple's.
okay, so yeah, there
Apple's
you go. I don't even know what I'm talking
software.
about. But that's the thing. I'm jumping headfirst into this right now, man. I'm even at the point now where I'm in talks with a couple of my buddies to move to the States for however long I can without needing a visa. Just because I have so many connections down there, other content creators that I want to link up with. And just like the freedom associated with being down there, we're in lockdown here in Nova Scotia right now. So I've been training with a ragtag collection of gym equipment that we have accumulated in my brother's apartment.
I love those videos. I loved how the gym, and it's just all this crazy stuff, and then it's the old college college student couches, man.
Exactly, man. Just like, oh, and my brother's apartment is pretty dingy. Like, he's not the cleanest guy. But we couldn't put it in my apartment because I live on the third floor of my building, which is
Okay.
in the small town that we're in. That's the top floor. So we had to put it in my brother's place because he has carpet, and then underneath that's is cement. So I can do deadlifts there, for example. But yeah, man, that's the move, I think, right now. Like, I'm thinking this is what I want to do. I can't think of a better career path than getting paid or finding a way to derive income from doing something that you love. And I think I'd be a fool not to do everything I possibly can to turn this into something, sustainable and great and successful. So that's where I'm thinking right now. For the next couple, in terms of like tangible goals, I guess you could say, in the next couple of months, probably move to the States, and then move to YouTube. So learn how to use the camera that I just spent way too much money on, and learn how to edit and all the above. So there's going to be a learning curve for sure, but I'm excited.
Welcome to my world, my friend.
Dude, I'm good. Don't be surprised if I reach out to you way more times than you want.
Hey, no,
I got to do stuff.
Legitimately, that was my next point. Is I'm so stoked for you because like I feel like I don't want to say I had any part in like your social media success, but it's just something that obviously like I preach to a lot of athletes, like, hey, build your brand and build your personal brand.
Absolutely.
So like listen, I had no part in it whatsoever, but it is so nice to see like just a guy who I was at least saying that stuff to and like saying that stuff around to see you succeed in that realm. Like it fires me up 100%.
Oh man, I really appreciate that. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't, see you putting an effort, putting that foot forward in like as many areas as possible in the realm of social media and think like, man, what do I got to lose? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Rob's just killing it out here. The guy's got a podcast. He's, you're doing you said you're working for Eastlink now, but
Mm-hmm.
not only that, you're also continuing to work for yourself and you're continuing to kind of foster these other areas of like entrepreneurship basically. But yeah, man, I think it's something that I'm preaching now too, because there's nothing special about us. You know what I mean? Like I was never privy to like all this stuff where like, oh yeah, you're, I know, like I didn't have any connections. You know what I mean? I just like to lift weights and I wanted to show people that, I guess, and I got lucky and now I'm running with it.
No, man, I think you say that like I got lucky, but I'm gonna tell you like just your story, like the Evan Holmes story, like basically what we've run down through, like that's where the luck comes from, right? Like it's not actually luck. It's genuinely who you are as a person and the messages that you can kind of translate with. And even some of your TikTok videos that I've seen and follow along with, like my favorite ones are, showing, you're showing the progress from, the infection in the leg to getting
Yeah.
to where you are now. Right. And
Yeah.
that is why, because you're genuinely you, man.
I appreciate that. And I think that's something that, you really learn when you get into social media is like, that's the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't replicate somebody else because they're going to be better at doing them than you are at doing them. Right. So, I mean, I've kind of taken that. I'm still trying to find that happy medium between, being 100% who I am and transparent and being, acceptable, but entirely true. And, I do think that some of those experiences contributed to, where my priorities lie. For example, I used to be a big party animal in high school and in first year, and then even into second year. And then, I got to a point where I had doctors telling me, yeah, man, you might lose your leg. I was like, damn, I'll be, happy for the rest of my life, sober, just walking on two legs, that I will be grateful for every day, as opposed to, needing to go out to the bars once a weekend to have fun. Right. Like it changed my perspective significantly. And I think that's one of the things that contributed to me being able to like be okay with just grinding so hard with respect to fitness and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like if you follow me on IG, like my diet is bland as hell. I just don't care. I stick to what I know works. And
one of my favorite comments I think I've ever read was somebody quoting you saying, I don't eat for taste, I eat for fuel. And they were like, this is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. A lot of people, man, like I post stuff. That's the beauty of TikTok, right? Is like people will see my thing, my content who don't follow me.
Yeah.
So I have some people see my content who are like, they don't understand, or at least they don't 100% buy into the whole, like my life revolves around fitness thing. And then when they see me boiling my chicken because I don't care enough to cook it with any more flavor, and that's the easiest way to do it, and I'm eating chicken and rice like 6 times a day, people are like, this is a really awful way to live. And I'm like, I love it.
It's definitely special. And, one thing that you mentioned too with the party animal, I think one thing that I really just want to almost resonate and touch on is the fact that, like East Coasters, we do kind of think that just because there's not a lot out here for like maybe other things to do and stuff like that, that is kind of like the default for a Saturday night is to go out and have a few drinks and stuff like that. And since the pandemic, I've definitely stepped away from like, going out to the bar. And I mean, obviously, because we can't even really do that. Right. And I'm more of a social drinker, so I don't even really have it in the house for the most part, aside from maybe a nice bottle of like red wine or, even the like local breweries around here that I want to support. But you
Absolutely.
know, I got like one can that I've had for like since probably December, just sitting in my in my fridge, and that's really important, is like, kind of realizing that, okay, hey, this like just drinking doesn't actually have to be the default for an evening out. Like we can do other things. We can, go to the gym, go for a run, go for a walk, anything really, like
Yeah,
hikes, movie
absolutely.
nights. Mm.
And it's funny that you say that because, where I grow up, almost everyone drinks like almost everyone drinks, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
just like you said, it's a default, right? And then I remember when I got to Ottawa and guys were like, we'd have team parties, right? And some of the guys were sober and like, yeah, I just don't drink. And I'd be like, what do you mean you don't drink? And they'd be
Yeah.
like, I never like felt the need to, I enjoy my doing other stuff. And I'm like, this is a new concept for me. But I'm
Oh,
so about that now. I'm
mhm.
I'm now at the point where I'm like, for me, I'm all about, and maybe to the point of it being cliche and a little bit, overzealous about it, but I'm all about putting all of my time into creating a life that, I don't need to take a vacation from, or that I don't want to take a vacation from. And that is, that translates to like, I'm going to spend all my time creating a life that I don't want or need to escape from by, getting belligerent on the weekend, because that's the only fun part of my life, right? I would much rather, put in the work for, X amount of time until I get to a point where, my life is more fun every day of the week than somebody else's Saturday night that they look forward to all week. That's a primary motivator for me for sure at this point. And it's definitely something that I think is that I'm glad that I kind of came to the realization of that, or at least that I now kind of like embody a little bit.
Dude, I really couldn't agree more. Like, I think that for me, that's just something that I've been struggling with, right? In the sense that, like, that was such a part of my, say, not that I looked forward to the weekend, but it was just like something that was just like, oh man, like we're excited for this kind of thing. But now just being able to realize, like, hey, this doesn't have to be the go to or anything like that, and I can enjoy my Monday to Friday just as much as my Saturday to Sunday. Like that, it's huge. And I think sometimes it's just, and I mean, by all means, live how you want to live, right? But I think sometimes, just for myself, knowing this second option, which almost sounds ridiculous, but it's like when that's just the norm that you're used to, it's like, oh wow, like super eye opening.
Yeah. And I mean, now people find it ridiculous that I don't drink, you know what I mean? Because like around here, especially being in a university town, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty common for students to kind of live that way. But people are like, oh, like, you're not going out tonight. And I'd be like, no, like I don't really go out. I mean, it's certainly because a good part of it is definitely because, fitness and training and stuff like that has a significant, like if you go out and get drunk on the weekend, like it's going to significantly impact, your overall progress. Right. So that's part of it for me too. But I know exactly what you mean. Like it is, especially around here, like rural East Coast Canada and in a university town, I'm the odd one out for sure.
Mhm. Well, it's funny too because you think of the weekend and like, so here's why I also have like, more of a probably a newfound appreciation for like the specific content that you post, right? Is because for myself, I really like the educational side of it. Like I like seeing this and more or less seeing like what you do and like breaking it down into the standpoint of like, okay, like caloric deficit and really like looking at specific numbers and analytics. Like that's where I'm going to succeed.
Yeah.
So like I've since I think I mentioned this last week with Sean. I think I've dropped about 60 pounds now. Like I was 319 and now I'm at, yeah, I'm sitting around like 262 right now. So
Good for you, man. That's phenomenal.
yeah, and I appreciate, and like, dude, I gotta give credit to you because like you're one of those people that I just like consume the content for, you know, extra motivation. And it blows my mind that I look at how I was treating my body like on a game day. It was just like, okay, let's go have a caramel. And honestly, it hurts me to kind of like say this right now, but it's like, dude, I go and I'll have like a caramel latte in the morning, like a large one to kind of, enough sugar and whatever to kind of keep you full throughout the duration of the game day, pop a couple Red Bulls, like just because they were there, like not the sugar-free ones either, just the regular ones.
Yeah.
Then, maybe grab a slice of the Gabriel's pizza if that's left over. Go home, start like editing, working as much as possible. Order 10-piece nuggets with like a large root beer, large fries, 2 chicken snack wraps, and like 2 double cheeseburgers because you were that hungry because you hadn't eaten all day and you were running around a football field for 4 hours. And then, finish editing, shower. By the time you get out of the shower, that food would be there. You scarf that down, and then you go to the club and you're, consuming whatever rum and cokes or that type of drink up until 2. And then you'd wake up and it's like, man, like, what did I just do? But right now I'm looking at that, right, as like, what was I doing? But back then it was like, yeah, this is a great Saturday.
Yeah, no, it's all perspective for sure. I mean, like, even for me, like, I think back to the way that I used to do things, and the way that I thought was right, or at least like okay, like acceptable. And now I think back and I'm like, man, I could never do that now. No way.
Yeah, and I'll even kind of just mention this because I do want to segue this into another question I had for you, because ironically, some guys that I've been, consuming content for different workouts and like, looking at different possible like meal replacements and stuff like that are, I've been tuning into yourself, obviously, Chris Bumstead, Will Tennyson, and like just enjoying all those guys' content. And I haven't watched him a lot, but I know Will mentions him, and I even think you posted a TikTok referencing like Greg Doucette.
Yeah.
Everybody who I just mentioned, yourself, the 3 others, like all Canadians. What do you think it is about, Canadian guys that are just for some reason taking off in that particular niche on the internet?
I don't know, because it is relatively new. And I'll say specifically, like, I've never even watched a Will Tennyson video before. But he's huge. You know what I mean? He's a significantly, like, he has a significant following. He's a big content creator. But yeah, it's all in recent the last couple of years. I mean, at least it seems like it to me. But you're right. Like, just recently, a lot of the fitness Canadian scene, the Canadian fitness scene is taken off, and it certainly helps when you have guys like, Greg Doucette is a hustler. He puts out like 2 videos a day sometimes on YouTube.
That's wild.
Like, it's unheard of, man. Like, the guy grinds content creation like nobody's business. It's absurd. And then C-Bum. So Chris Bumstead is just, the classic humble Canadian, but goes down there and just roasts guys for the Mr. Olympia Classic title. Like, that is phenomenal. You know what I mean? And as a Canadian, like, obviously as a Canadian, I love that. But then also the fact, like, I love how humble he is. You know what I mean? Like, you'd never guess. The guy rips on himself all the time because that's his demeanor. You know what I mean? He doesn't walk around like, I am the top of the game, even though he is.
And I think what's so interesting on that point is we're from 2 different perspectives in terms of like fitness and whatnot. I'm trying to like establish a healthy lifestyle to dig myself out of a hole I kind of put myself in weight wise. And you're looking to, get as shredded and bulk and big as possible kind of thing, right? And be that bodybuilder. But yet we both enjoy his content because for me, in my position, I'm like, man, this is a guy who's so humble and I don't feel intimidated right now, or like I feel like I can learn and help myself. And then obviously for you, he's at the pinnacle of where you want to probably be. I guess, do you plan on competing maybe?
Not really. I mean, you got to have insane genetics to even think about that. I don't think I have those genetics right now. I'm just kind of trying to solidify. I'm trying to just establish myself within the industry. I'm also not a big Speedo guy, so I'm not sure about how that would work or how that I would feel. But I definitely. The thing is, I'm not going to do something unless I know I'm going to be competitive at it. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I love bodybuilding and powerlifting and just training in general. Is like I know eventually I can be competitive if I decide I want to be. It's just a matter of time. And I know right now I'm not going to be competitive in either of those either of those spaces, even though I'm training as if I could be. And that's just because maybe at some point I will. But as of right now, it's not a goal of mine.
No, fair enough. But yeah, again, to the point, just like kind of showcasing like C-Bum and like his content and how he can really, just relate to, pretty much anybody for his humbleness.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's And that's one of the reasons that I think so many people like him too. You know what I mean? He is like, especially on TikTok too, with all these up and coming like content creators, like these young guys. Because of the older demographic for the most part of guys coming up in the industry. You know, Sebum is the well established, you know, consensus like all father. You know, everyone loves Sebum. He's the GOAT, and there's no debate. You know what I mean? Everyone loves him.
It's so funny because whatever I'll watch something in a YouTube video for him, and I'm kind of on like the fitness algorithm for TikTok.
Yeah.
And whatever tip or trick that he'll give in a YouTube video, I'll go and my next like 5 videos on my For You page are just people reiterating what he just said.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. It happens a lot in the industry for sure.
Yeah, but no, yeah, dude, that's like I said, I've really been enjoying it, and yeah, even for myself and my own journey of it all, like following along with your content and stuff like that, like it's huge, and the stuff that you do, I think, lends a bigger impact than a lot of people want to give credit to that specific niche and industry.
Well, I mean, I would hope so, but I also understand like the industry itself gets a bad rap because there are a lot of people in the industry that are, you know, out there to scam people, make quick money and that kind of stuff. But no, that's definitely, I think that for those of us who are in it for, you know, good reason, yeah, we're more than happy to you know, share what we've learned for the sole purpose of just helping other people and just fostering a community, right? So
exactly. Well, it's honestly been such a pleasure catching up. I mean, hopefully, who knows, maybe we'll see the Atlantic bubble back before you take off to the US and I can either hop up or you can hop down. I mean, that door is always open, of course. And the another thing too, any video questions, I mean, by all means, you shoot them my way. I'll help you sit down and edit.
Dude, I'll be spamming you. Like I said, you're offering me, I'm gonna take you up on that offer, and it's gonna be to the point where I'm gonna be asking questions that you're like, man, I forgot people didn't even know this stuff. Like the simplest of things, you know what I mean? I'm gonna do my best to watch some tutorials and whatever, but I'll take you up on that offer for sure, man.
Sure. And
maybe at some point we could even do like a little bit of a collab or something like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'll throw the questions back at you. I'll be like, hey man, how do you bench 225 for a rep? Because I've been trying to figure that out for a while.
Well, man, I can do 225, but my bench isn't much higher than that myself. So, but yeah, if you ever have any questions, of course, man, that door is always open as well.
100%. Well, hey man, I appreciate your time, and this is the part of the show where I hand the show over to the guests. I mean, it's completely your show now. Whatever you wanted to chat about, life lesson, childhood story. I mean, the show is completely yours. I know you got a lot of exciting things coming up too, so you can even, if you want to promo anything, by all means, show's yours.
Well, I appreciate that, man. As far as anything that I like, want to promo, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. My Instagram handle is eholmes.fitness. I don't know if you can just put that in the caption or something like that. And then my TikTok username is Evan_Holmes_. I'm pretty sure I might have to double check that one. So, feel free to follow me on there. I really appreciate it. My content, the nature of my content is a combination between kind of like educational stuff and then just kind of keeping up with what I'm doing. But other than that, I think if I had one thing that I wanted to say and just kind of like leave off with, it's just to, if you have something that you really love, and this is just based off my experience, but if you have something that you really love, by all means go after that, because there's nothing that stops people other than themselves from achieving that kind of thing. Like I was saying earlier in the show, there's nothing special about me and you know what I mean? We just decided we wanted to do something. And at that point, it's only a matter of when, not if you decide you want to do something. So that's something that I think I've really learned and taken, as far as a take home point that I'm going to take with me moving forward is just, if I found something that I loved and I decided I wanted to go with it and it panned out the way that I always dreamt that it might. So I think that, and there's nothing special about me. I didn't have any special connections or opportunities. And it's still, it seems to be working out. So I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you taking me and having me on the show and giving me the opportunity to kind of explain, where I'm coming from and that kind of stuff. And even just the airtime, you know what I mean? To fire my usernames out there. Like, I appreciate that, the exposure.
Hey, no, I mean, hopefully it helps, but I think all in all, that's a great message. And again, I can't thank you enough for hopping on and joining us this evening, man. It's been nice catching up.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Greels Reels. That was Evan Holmes, another fantastic episode. And hey, do me a favor if you enjoyed this one, share it with a friend, tell a friend, leave us a review, comment something down below. Anything at all really helps get these episodes out to more people. And in the meantime, stay best kind.